Welcome to the Rediscover podcast. I'm here with Meghan Heritage of Blue West Properties. Hello, Meghan.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
It's been fun getting to know you over the course of, a few days only?
Yeah.
We've only met once before this, but I feel like I know so much about you because I've seen your videos online. I've seen what you've done, and you seem to be a pretty amazing person when it comes to this Grand Haven area, this Tri-Cities area, the things that you're doing, even with giving and the business that you've done and the way you're giving back to the community is pretty awesome. I wanted to talk to you a little about you.
Okay.
Just kind of like starting off with, so where do you come from? Have you always lived here? Where'd you live before? Tell us a little bit about you as a person.
Yeah, so I'm the daughter of a U.S. Army colonel who did a couple of tours in Iraq and a blue-collar dad. I lost him a couple of years ago who was, truly one of my very best friends. He ended every conversation with, "You're the greatest thing I ever did with my life, and you're the best, over and out, Captain." And they were divorced when I was 6, and I always say they didn't really care for each other, but they really, really loved me. And the trajectory from there is, just really having a lot of grit with a mom who had been overseas and with me and trying to raise me and went back to college in her late 30s, I think, and had a civilian job and then eventually went active military. So Port Huron, Sarnia area is where I'm from. And I went to university first at Ferris State University and was pursuing a degree in pharmacy and realized that that wasn't really where I wanted to be. So stayed there and got a degree in secondary English education. And then went off to Vegas to teach in inner city Vegas, and then came home to get my graduate degree. Got that in West Michigan, and eventually fell into real estate and worked for a large land development company.
So you said 6 when they were divorced, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember how that felt?
Yeah, I absolutely do. It's one of the things that I do think comes into real estate because they think a lot of people think that we just sell houses, and we don't. So divorce, job loss, relocation, death, injury, those are things that we deal with all the time. It is very common that someone has something that's traumatic going on inside of their life. And so I always tell my clients I'm on Team Little People. As the product of divorce, I'm on Team Little People. And, it's really important that we make it as easy for them as we possibly can.
So when you say make it easy, that you're obviously, because you felt the damage of divorce, right? Because
Sure.
I had, I was married before. Mm-hmm. My parents aren't divorced, but my 2 boys are a product of divorce and working through that with them and all that kind of thing. So what types of emotions do you think come with that you're aware of with clients?
Well, I had a really, really great support system around me, but I lived in a completely different country. I was living in Canada. And my mom left and I went back to the United States. And so my day-to-day was different. My home was different. Everything was different. My paternal grandparents stepped in that space and provided stability. And they were there, all the way up until a few years ago when I lost both of them in a very short period of time. And I lost my dad in that period of time, too, during COVID when Canada was shut down, which is a story for another day. But they would all be gone within 16 months of each other. So I think that, and there's studies about it, right, that one person, 2 people stepping in and providing stability in that space can really can be the differentiator in how somebody handles it. I'm an only child, so everything was me internally dealing with it. I believe that their divorce caused me to be very communicative, very open, very much a people pleaser.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And later on, I had to unwind some of that and recognize what conflict was mine and what wasn't, and that it wasn't my job always to jump in and try to solve and help. And sometimes people just needed to work out their own stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing they did really well is they loved me and they showed up for me and did the very best that they could with the tools that they had at the time, right? I have better tools in my marriage, I believe, than my parents did in theirs. So,
Yeah.
right?
No, yeah, that's true. I mean, even in having gone through divorce and then now remarried, I wound up with better tools
Right.
to be able to have a better marriage the second time around and do it all better, right? Do it right. There's a huge difference because my boys were 5 years old and then just barely born, the other one, when we wound up getting divorced. So the younger one has a different outlook on the whole thing. He's like, oh, yeah, I always have 2 birthday parties. I always have.
Right.
The older one felt it a lot more because it was a Christian home.
Yeah.
That he was raised in. And he even went to like Christian school and that kind of thing. So it hit him a lot harder.
Yeah, my grandparents did something that I felt was really smart. So they sent me away to this camp in Northern Ontario called the Huron Church Camp. And I was going to but Catholic school. And so faith was a big part of that journey and also living by example. So, maybe there would be tumultuousness in my parents' separation and all of that, but my grandparents had this level of stability where I don't know that I really ever saw them have a super crossword I think they were married for 75, 73 years. So they would be like snarky funny. And my relationship with my husband is very sarcastic as well. She'd say, well, you're going to put that chair right in my road. And I'm trying to get back and forth to the kitchen. And he would just kind of smile and move his chair and, off we go. But they never came for each other. They knew, I'm sure, where they could really hurt each other.
Sure.
But they never came for each other. And I feel the same way in my relationship with my husband. He would never come for me. Like the whole world is coming for us. But when your partner knows those spots and sticks their thumb in them, I think that's where you still, you really start to create breaks.
Well, and then I think those are the very toxic relationships, right? That people wind up in, where people are like,
right.
they know where to dig. They know exactly what to say to get to you. My wife and I are the same way, where we can joke and we're very sarcastic and we have fun and we know what not to say.
Yeah.
Right? We're not to dig into, and she's really good about being my biggest fan.
Right. Yeah. And that is a thing, right? My husband is always like, I come home and be like, we should buy Chipotle. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he just lets me go. And I find out 4 days later and I don't know that this is true. I do know it's true about Culver's because I did once decide I don't even really eat that kind of food, but I decided I wanted to buy a Culver's. You have to work there. And so there's no way I could actually afford, certainly at that time, to buy the Culver's and work at the Culver's and also be a real estate agent to pay for the Culver's. So he just lets me go off on this. And then later on, he'll be like, oh, that didn't work out, that dream. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
But he does. I think he believes I could do way more, certainly way more than I can for myself. In dealing with a friend who was getting divorced, she said to me, I just don't want my kids to be screwed up. And so I had to say to her, I'm trying not to take that personally, but am I all screwed up? And so I feel like, sometimes we get the opportunity to take the very best pieces out of a situation, recognize that the players were human, and that my perspective of what was happening inside of that situation at 6 years old or 15 years old or 20 years old or whatever is probably not, is not the whole story. And that I needed to show up and love my parents for all of the things that they were and not spend time in thinking about the things that they were not.
It's amazing what you realize when you're an adult.
Right.
That when you look back and you're like, oh, my mom was only like 25.
Right.
And you think my dad was only this age. And you think, oh, gosh, like there were just also trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
And I didn't know that until it was about a pumpkin patch. So my son Jack is like 2 years old, and he was going to the pumpkin patch, and he was going with my friend Elizabeth and a bunch of other families. And John, my husband, was taking them to the pumpkin patch. It was something at the YMCA, and I had clients, and I had to work. Like, we needed money, and I had to work, and so I sat at the Southtown gas station in town, which is now, a big car wash, and cried because I was going to do something that I didn't want to do for the betterment of my family in the long run, but it didn't seem fair. And then I called my mom and said, I'm really sorry that I was mad at you when you were in Bosnia for missing my track meet. Right? The perspective of this woman was trying to do all of these things and be all of these things and pay for all of these things. And, you just don't get it until you're there. It's like my friends when they say, well, my kids came home from college, so I know I'm about to just get extorted for everything. And you come home and you're like, did you know that, laundry detergent is $12? Did you know that? Right?
Yeah.
It's so hard in the moment. And I just said, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. So sorry.
We grew up in El Paso, Texas, and it's known for, there's a mountain that has like this lit up humongous star on it. And they used to only light it during Christmas, but then it became a thing where it's lit every night now. So you can see it from far away, you're getting to El Paso. So when we were younger, I didn't realize this when I was younger, but my dad had to take a second job delivering like Domino's pizza. And he was already working at like a bank, I believe at the time. And then he does Domino's pizza. And he used to tell us that he was going to go light the star. Oh. And so we would go outside and he would get on the phone and he knew exactly when they turned it on.
I love
so he's
that.
like, oh, look, I'm going to turn it on. Ready? Set. And then it would turn on and we would get so excited. But meanwhile, he's delivering pizzas.
Yeah.
Right? Just driving. And it was the times when you had to get there in 30 minutes or less kind of thing, when Domino's was doing that whole thing. So, but when you look back and you're like, oh gosh, well, how much he did and then still tried to make us happy and make us feel like that's not, Well,
you were to be safe and secure, and he's looking at the end game. He's not looking at that particular evening. He's looking what he's going to be able to provide long term. And I think, when you say I learned in my first marriage and then went into my second, different, healed, healthy, whole, that's really what we're looking for, right? Yes, if you, cheat on your first spouse and then you cheat on your second, and you cheat on your third, and you continue and you tell everybody that, you've changed, but your repeated behavior shows that you're not changed, right? That comes to, what are you showing the world through what you're doing, not saying to the world. And that's, I believe my dad was a drinker. He was sober for 30 some years before I eventually, he had a stroke. And I was the only person there and talking to a neurologist. And I said, are you 100% positive that my dad is not coming back? Because they had told me that they thought that he was experiencing some pain based on a surgery that they did. And he said, no, your dad's not going to come back in the same way that you knew him. And he was not able to speak, and it was a whole thing. And all I could think was, that man did so much work to be sober, and I'm about to shoot him up with Dilaudid to stop his pain. And if he comes back, he's going to be so mad at me, right? That I broke his sobriety. Yeah. And you just look back and you've got just such a different perspective of the people that make it out of it and become better, and then the people that are going to be in a habitual situation where they're going to do the things that are best for them and serve them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough, because you and I got, close very quickly by being vulnerable and talking about what was actually going on inside of our lives. And there are people who are willing to do that because they want a relasting ship. Yeah. And then there are people who are just in relationship on a daily basis and what it looks like is more important to them than what it actually is.
Yeah. And I just think it's when you lose people in your life, and going back, like I've lost tons of people in my life, and we talked all about this and stuff, and you quickly realize that you don't have time to worry about what do I look like to this person. It's better to find those, like you said, the lasting ships, and just be real.
Right.
Yeah, there's like, I mean, we're not 12, like, and trying to look better and than the other person, or a teenager that's, you know what I mean, that's more worried about what they look like. It's trying to find those relationships in your life that last. It's just been a new thing for me. Like, you know, because I had the friends I had when I was younger, right? And we grew up with them, and they're kind of mostly all gone at this point. And now it's like, okay, well, you know, I miss having good friends.
Right.
That's, you know, you grow up and you start working and you start doing your thing, and then you put all your life into work. And then you're like, but you know, I miss having good friends.
Yeah, and friends who are going to talk about like big things and allow you to grow and shine light on you and clap for you and be there even when you screwed up. And I think it is difficult as a grown-up when you are in a position of any kind of attention. When you're drawing attention to yourself, you are going to draw attack. And so societally, that teaches us not to be vulnerable, because if we're going to be attacked, we don't want to be vulnerable in any way. But the thing that actually creates relationship is being vulnerable and saying like, oh yeah, I've had struggles with my mental health and wellness too, or it was difficult for me to grow my business, or real estate's a mess right now, or, you know, it's sort of scratching the surface just a little bit to be like, oh, you know, can we get a mutual trust going here so we can have a real relationship, not just a surface relationship, and not being in a position where we're trying to leverage everybody, right? Like there's transactional sales and there's relationship sales. So I am always very interested in the backstory, because I have just had my mind blown by people that I thought I knew their story, and then they tell me something and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? You had a baby when you were 16 and then became a medical doctor? Or, you know, you grew up in a situation like that and you found a way to overcome all of this. I want that. And I don't want to sit at a table where people are having low-level gossip and talking about other people. It's a form of communication. It's not one I'm interested in. I want to sit at a table where people are talking about solving affordable housing, or how we look into the mental health crisis in our nation, or, you know, something bigger where we can learn and grow. And we, you know, just because we don't agree politically, or just because we have a disagreement about something, doesn't mean that now I hate you and I'm going to take my ball and run.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just being real and understanding that, like, even when we were talking about our parents and looking back, that these are real people with real backstories, with real ideas, I think it's always been on my mind. That's why everything's kind of called rediscover.
Right.
It's like, from the foundations of the world, God had this plan, and then at such a time as this, he created you to fulfill it. Right. Mm-hmm. And everybody has that. Everybody's got a story. Everybody has a purpose. You know, we just have to kind of rediscover that. And when you start looking at people that way instead,
right,
even people that have hurt you, people that have abused you, or people, anything like that, you start to look at life a little differently. You start to be a little more empathetic. You start to realize, oh, we all suck in some way, but we all are also trying to do good. Right, we're also trying to do something.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think there's a big difference between somebody who uses something that has happened in their life in sort of the victim mentality, to put that lead in their backpack and carry it around for the rest of their life. Like, oh, woe is me. I was abused as a child. And like, when you are a grown up and you have the opportunity to seek help, that is your job, so that you do not bleed that nonsense, that hurt onto other people in your life. There's no excuse for me saying I had a step monster who was incredibly unkind to me, and that is now why I am unkind to other people.
Right.
Direct opposite. I had a stepdad who would say things to me like, well, it's a good thing you're pretty because you're going nowhere with your brains. And then call me pumpkin face and say, well, you know, you're really not that attractive, so it's a good thing you get good grades. Like, my mixed messaging was so bananas that years ago I was walking into a black tie, and I turned to my husband and said, do I have something on my face? And he was like, no. And he said, why? And I said, because people are looking at me. And he was like, babe, they're looking at you because you look great tonight. You know, you look really pretty. So, I mean, I have to notice and shift that, right? Like, I have to look at that and be like, oh, okay, maybe I need some self-awareness around some of this messaging that I've gotten, and I need to unwind that. But when we move forward in business and we're going to be in interaction, or we're pastoring a church or whatever, we cannot afford as parents to let that ooze out all over our kids. We have to ask ourselves, is that my story based on how I grew up, or is that something that's actually happening to my friend, my child, whatever, perspective?
Right. Right. And then the diabolical place that came from. And then so it's interesting because you said, you know, as a grown up, then you're supposed to, because what if someone did that to him, right? And what if that was the case? I don't know what the case was, but what if it was?
Right.
And then he didn't grow up to change that and realize that he was bleeding that onto you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And my children know a little bit about that story, and so they wanted to like go find him. Which I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. And he's passed now. But he gets to keep his dignity intact. But he also, if you don't want me to talk about your bad behavior, then don't have bad behavior, right? I am so grateful for that man. He taught me how to be compassionate to my students when I was teaching in Vegas. He taught me how to have grit and tenacity. He taught me how to figure out what's true. I could not probably have had a more valuable relationship in the end. My tormentor was my teacher. But I did not allow that experience to be anything more than a chapter in a long book of things that will be me when I'm done. And I think that is, that's something that's trending right now. You know, well, I can't do that because of this, and I can't do that because of this. And when you talk about, you know, what you were saying before from the God, like I talk about it like the original download. The original download's not junked up. You are perfectly made. You are equipped through him, and you might not be qualified always, but you're going to get called, and the qualification will come during the calling. But are you going to allow spiritual warfare and people coming for you as you begin to attract to stop you from shining your light?
This is going to sound off topic, but it isn't.
Okay.
Have you seen the new documentary called Brats? Okay, so it's about the Rat Pack back in the 80s, right, that we kind of grew up with. So it's interesting because I'm not so sure that it came across the way it was supposed to come across. When I was watching it, it very quickly, the one who made it is, I think it's Andrew McCarthy, and he was huge back in the day. He was, I think, in 16 Candles and St. Elmo's Fire guy. Okay. We know that most of those people came out of it and they're still famous today and they're fine. He took that label of Brat Pack too personally, and it just spiraled him down to not having a career. And this is his documentary, going back and trying to find all these people he hasn't talked to for like 30 years, like, you know, Molly Ringwald and you know, all the people from then. You talk to even Emilio Estevez and things like that. Very quickly, you start to realize that everybody kind of moved on from it. They scattered and they moved on from it. Demi Moore seemed to then counsel him on camera Like, hey, you made it worse than it was. Like, you could have come out of that kind of stuff. And it's really hard to hear. When I was watching it, he was in the car kind of talking to the camera. And he said, I've been trying to get a hold of a lot of these people, and it's been really hard. I'm trying to get it with Rob Lowe, but then he's gone. And he said something that struck me that I think nobody really talks about this documentary that gave some insight into his life. Is he said, my wife told me this is going to be a humbling process for you.
Right.
It's going to do wonders for your humbleness. And she's like, and then he says, she said that, and then he says, I really hate it.
Yeah. Right.
I really hate it.
Word. Yeah.
And that right from that was like in the middle of the documentary. I'm like, oh, this is a whole other thing. His wife understands that he's dwelling on it. You know what I mean? And it's become this thing. And it's good for him for making the documentary, because I was totally interested in it. But it did come across like a big counseling session for him.
Yeah.
But now he's in his 60s, barely still working through it. And that's hard. It's better. You seem to have the personality of, okay, I'm going to do better. I don't care what you think of me, what you're looking at. You just have that kind of personality, that tenacity to just be like, okay, but I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to move on. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't stay down very long. A lot of my value comes from helping other people. And so if I can stay in alignment with, I might not be feeling good on the inside, but I need to go serve and use my time, talent, and treasure in order to help other people, that will bring me joy. I have also used work as a procrastination tool to not deal with my own issues and grief. And I have to be aware of that. I have to be aware that more isn't always more. But what you and I both learned in, the very brief time that we've known each other is life is very short. We don't get to make a decision about when it stops. None of us are getting out of this thing alive. And so I had better do the best that I can with each individual day. And I had better not be in a space where I have regrets. That does not mean that we have to keep signing up over and over for somebody's bad behavior. And I think that's a big confusion in Christianity. Jesus said 7 times 70. He did not say that we need to climb in the hamster wheel with the crazy hamster and continue to run a race with them. He said, and I was really bummed out about this. We have a friend who's a Bible scholar. He's like brilliant, went to Princeton, and we were in a small group, and somebody said, well, I'm just agnostic. I don't love her. I don't hate her. I don't have any feelings for her. And my friend Matt was like, yeah, so there's no agnostic in the Bible. We're called to love our brother. And I think all of us threw our head back and we're like, ugh. Like that, love your enemies is it's a real thing. But it's so easy. It's so easy to be like, you don't get access to me. I'm not going to keep signing up for this thing and trying to help you if you want to run your crazy race of, free will over here. But I don't hate you. I pray for you every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I once sent somebody a text who in an off way called me an effing bee. And said somebody else said it, but shared the sentiment, that I was praying for him and that I hoped he got through the difficult space that he was in. You are not going to pull me out of my center.
Yeah.
I am not going to get out of alignment because of nonsense and the cacophony of sound that is out there. That is not what I want to do with my short time. Does it hurt when somebody shows up other? 100%. Does it suck when you can't find your people? But what I would encourage anybody to do is, I couldn't find a table that I wanted to sit at when I got here, so I made a table. I could find people that I wanted at a table, and thank goodness they were like, yeah, I'd like to sit at that table. That seems like a nice table.
Go sit at Megan's table.
Right.
Yeah.
Why are we all so upset about the fact that we're not invited? when we're not providing an invitation.
That's exactly how I look at it. And the things that I do, right? Like, it's not, because I've only been around here from El Paso for like 8 years, going on 9. And it's been a long time for people to start to recognize, oh, this guy lives here, you know, instead of, you know, I don't know. There's always this, like, especially in Grand Haven, 5 years ago. Now there's a lot more like brown people like me around, but back then I was like, are we like the only people in this town?
Yeah, the first time I ever noticed color was in this town. Because,
Really?
I was raised in an area that was very diverse. And then I taught in Vegas, very diverse, and then lived in Grand Rapids. Ferris was really diverse. My graduate studies programs were very diverse. And I remember, like, I saw a Black family walking down the street in downtown Grand Haven, and I got so excited. And when I was relocating our associate pastor, she said, can I ask a question? I was like, yeah. She goes, where are all the brown people? I'm like, well, you're going to bring them. We're going to slowly build a population here. Cause it's nonsense to me. Like, and I imagine that adds a whole nother level of like trying to be included, but it goes back to when we were going through everything, with George Floyd, and I was listening to people, I asked the question more than once, have you ever had a brown friend? Have you ever had a Black friend? And then that's probably a whole nother like podcast based on our own perspective though, right? And how we were raised and our knowledge of a situation, but still like a human compassion level, right? And that people generally want to be heard, valued, and have some sense of belonging, right? That's why we go to churches. It's why we're in clubs. It's why we play sports. It's why we try to get into that space. But until you can really see somebody at the soul level and understand what drives them, you're not in real connection.
Well, and it's the appreciation and the respect and love of the other culture.
Of course.
Right? Like it's not technically about color. It's more like about culture and class.
Yes.
Is really what it is. So, even though a lot of people thought he was a little nuts, Muhammad Ali once said, I'm not going to marry outside of my family because I don't want to lose my culture. But we can still connect in that way, right? But that was him in the 60s,
right?
When a lot was going on back then, right? But there's something to be said of a lot of people losing themselves in other people's cultures, and they're missing. Like, for example, we moved up here. We've been kind of in this culture for a long time. And one time I remember going back to visit El Paso, and it was so weird in my mind and on my eyes to see so many dark-haired, colored, like, people. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I forgot. In my mind, I was just so used to now seeing I almost started to think that I was also a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person for a while there. Like,
That's awesome.
I just didn't even see it anymore, and I didn't realize people would still see me, right? But it was so weird to go back and see it. And now we have like some Hispanic friends in the area,
right? And
it's fun too. Okay, we're gonna go hang out with them and talk Spanish the whole time.
Yeah. I have a similar, so I had this amazing friend, the family's last name is Vicencio, and they were so inclusive of me when I was, growing up middle school. And so I got to be in a quinceañera.
Oh, yeah.
And dance the cumbia and eat menudo and fideo and all of these things at their house. And so I was asking my like white Irish mom if I could please, Irish, English, Dutch, whatever, like if I could please have a quinceañera. Yeah. Because we had a large-ish Hispanic population, and I was raised Roman Catholic on that side. And so it started to become a part of my life to spend time with this family, and it was so fun. And I really wanted to engage in their culture more and be in that space, which, I mean, it might have been a little bit silly, but I did make my way into 2 quinceañeras.
So you didn't have one?
No. And I can dance the cumbia, and I do get very, very excited when I hear any kind of mariachi music, and I love, Mexico, and I love all the different culture, though, because I think it's a way that we learn about perspective and have different people. This is not my favorite story, but when I first moved here, I was pretty concerned. I do not care for the lack of diversity. I feel like it is something that really helped me growing up, and I'm not a huge fan. And so I made a comment to someone that I really wanted my sons to have a more diverse space to grow up. And their comment back to me was that I should take them on a mission trip to Haiti. Mm. And I remember thinking, like, so they can see like Black and brown people that need help. Like, I grew up in an area where there were many, many people that were highly successful. Like, not every Black person needs your help. And this is not going to be solved by having a all-white book club and reading about, white fragility or whatever. Like, bless you for trying to learn and understand, but this is going to be on the streets, in relationship, and built with awareness and an openness to have open communication about our differences and how they make us better. So I guess, I want that for West Michigan. I have seen, much more of it in the, I think, 17 years or so since I've been on the lakeshore. But it is something that I deeply seek in my everyday life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little tough that just in this area, it just seems to be like that. Because, I mean, you could go north into Muskegon, and it's pretty diverse in that sense, but in a different way, I guess. I don't know. But I think it needs it.
Yeah.
I think the people here have been pretty welcoming. I think they got to know that we lived here for a while there. I'm going to be honest. When we first got here, I got pulled over several times. Just, what are you doing here? I'm like, I live right over here. Kind of thing. But that was, 8 years ago. But but now it's like, oh, they knew who we were. They knew where we lived. Like, that's how it was for a while, because I felt like we were the only ones around, until I went to Walmart late at night, and I'm like, oh, where have you guys been?
You're like, you're my people.
Yeah. Where are you guys living at? Mostly in the township, probably, but.
Yeah. No, I think that so there's the Hispanic Cultural Festival, which I think is bringing awareness, and Blue West has been a sponsor of that. Just trying to do what we can to create a welcoming environment, and you too, right? Leaning into that space and trying to, when you've got an opportunity like you do and you know how to do podcasts, like, go talk to one of those people, right? And have them talk about what this has been like and why people should benefit into what they're doing. But it is a human connection issue. That's where it starts. It starts with one. It starts with one human connection, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. And that's how that table started too, right? Like, when I meet you, and then I'm like, oh, this guy will like this guy and this guy and this and this and this guy. But we all have to remember, at one point, I was the guy that, was told, go ahead and hang your own shingle in this town. It's career suicide. You're not from here.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, right?
How long ago was that?
15 years.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
Would you say a lot has changed since then around here?
I would say a lot has changed, but I also would say a lot has changed in me. And so what I've learned is, if you lean into this community will lean back into you. And I got low and humble and went in a lot of places where I was uncomfortable and met people. I learned about our local nonprofit organizations and where I could serve even when I didn't have any money. And I really think that we would all benefit from knowing more about the socioeconomic issues that are here, the cultural and diversity issues that are here, the education issues that are here, and really digging into that. Because there are a lot of people out there that are doing work that is not at the forefront, that is important work, and they need help.
And you would say that when you start leaning into that and giving back into the community, that kind of connected you a lot more and people received you better? Is that what?
Absolutely, because I wasn't I mean, I think Zig Ziglar, right, originally said, or maybe it's somebody else and I'll get corrected, but that's fine. You can get everything you want by helping people first to get what they want. And I think that was in my mind. Like, let's go see whether I can make friends. Let's go see whether people will accept me. Let's go see if, maybe I cannot be a part of a large real estate franchise and I can grow my own business here and people will love and accept me. And there were people who, made up stories and came for me and did all kinds of interesting things. And then there were people who really leaned in and said, I'm happy to help you in any way I can. And I just kept staying in that space and ignoring this space. And eventually it just became habitual energy. And, it was 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, right? But I told you this, and that's a story for another day. But like when they read my bio now, I'm like, wow, that's really fantastic. She must be exhausted. And also, I'm just a girl who got fired from a bowling alley. Like there's always what everybody is saying about you and then who you really are.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of trying to unwind somebody's dissertation. In the absence of communication, assumptions are made. Yeah. But if I hear one more time, oh my gosh, you're so different than what I thought you were. Well, why were you judging me in the first place? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And now I don't. I'm like, wow, that she seems really interesting. I want to meet her. Brock in my office saying like, well, I said vulnerably, I'm like, I'm really struggling to make a podcast. He's like, why don't you walk upstairs to that guy who's in your husband's old space who's like literally helping people make podcasts. But if I wasn't vulnerable and said like to someone who I work with, I'm supposed to be a leader, but is also my friend and I highly respect him, I'm struggling. Yeah. I would have been thinking about making a podcast for the rest of my natural life instead of making a podcast.
Instead of making one.
Right.
And I don't think it's just here. I think that even I've seen it. I can't speak about other cultures, but I've seen it even in Hispanic circles where they just don't want to let people outside the circle in, and I think what you hit upon is the right thing. It's maybe sometimes they think, okay, we're coming in and we want to take, and we want to take this business and we want to take the money and we know it's rich here, that kind of thing, until you start giving into it. And giving yourself into it, and then they realize, oh no, they're not here for that. And the same thing happens when you wound up in that Hispanic family, right? And then they just open themselves up to you now,
right?
Completely.
Yeah. And why don't we? So I've had people say, well, how did you get to be friends with her? As if humans are completely inaccessible, and maybe some of them are, but most of the time I just said, hey, do you want to have coffee? Or if somebody knew like this, right? You know what you're doing in this space and I don't know what I'm doing in this space. So how about I lean into you and value what you're doing and pay you to help do what I want to do and shorten my curve. I think that we forget to ask. And I will say at, 45 years old with 2 kids in a relatively successful business, at least is the way I define it and the way that we've been able to benefit back to the community. There's nothing I like more than somebody calling me and saying, I need some help. Right? And some people helped me and some people came for me, and that's totally and completely fine. There's always going to be those people. And we have to learn how to better handle with the tools that we have, whether for me, it's walking in nature, it's spending time with people who I know want me to do well, it's being in the Word, it's parking myself in a pew, it's meditation, it's yoga, it's working out, it's being in water. Those are things that I need that go back to grounding me. Yeah. But as long as I am out there doing big things, people are going to come for me. So the idea that we're going to get all this to stop, it's not going to stop.
Yeah, no.
We just have to find a way to have the ability to notice that we're starting to spiral into the negative space and call somebody to be like, can you please correct my thinking and remind me who I am?
I was just with some people yesterday and I was mentioning to them, oh yeah, I'm going to go do a podcast with Meghan Heritage from Blue West Properties. And you know what they said to me?
She's the worst.
No,
I'm just kidding.
No. They said, how did you get to be friends with her?
So I love it.
Now you're up here. And I think people are now looking at you different. They're like, oh, that Blue West Properties, that's a huge thing around here, you know?
Yeah, and I'll always have trouble, accepting a compliment. It's something that I work on, or, somebody saying it's a big thing. There's a level of humility in me, that in a humbleness that I'm still just really surprised at everything that God has given me and grateful. I had built hundreds of custom houses with a company that I used to work for, and finally got the opportunity to build my own, and had laundry on the main floor and had a garage I could park in. And I walked around crying for like the first 2 or 3 days. And my husband was like, seriously, I'm like, I just can't believe that we get to live here. I'm so grateful for every lesson that I've learned. Every person who has said you can't, and every person who said you can and I'll help you. I just know that I want to be on the side of, if there's anything that I can do to serve you in some way, I will be happy to, shorten your curve. So I'm glad. They should probably call me. I'd love to have coffee with them if they're nice. If they're not, then maybe I'll pray for them from across the yard.
You send them a text. I'm praying for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When I had another realtor say, "Well, you've got quite a reputation." Like somebody had done something that was unkind. It was legal, but I don't believe ethical or moral, and that's probably a whole nother podcast too. But he said, I don't think he would do that because you have quite a reputation. He's afraid of you, or intimated that there would be some kind of, repercussion if you were to do something like that to me. And I was like, quite a reputation. Like, I think my reputation is for being philanthropic, for mentoring. Like, I won the Athena Award. I won the Young Professionals Award. Like, I think that those are just local, right? I think that's who I am, but like, what stories out there on them streets?
I know, right?
Yes, I drive an Escalade. I know all of the songs that Tupac sings. You and I talked about that. Yeah. I know all the words. But I think that I know who I am. And unless you are if you're showing up ugly, I'm going to call you on it.
I wonder if there's something to, I'm just going to create a whole other podcast of just bring people on. What do you think about Meghan Heritage?
Oh, thank you.
And then we can figure out what's out there.
I have a beautiful friend who always wants me to run for office. And I'm like, I can't, because I would be like rocking myself in the corner. I just can't. I'm too emotionally vulnerable to take that level of attack. Maybe someday I'll be that much in my ground. But
what if it's all good things, though?
I mean, and maybe you only read the good things, Sure. Maybe... but I mean, in the bad things, I guess that's where we grow, and we have to have, some level of ownership and atonement, and then show up differently, consistently over time, right? And then people will trust that our actions are actually who we are.
Well, and there's something when you're in a good friend space of somebody being real with you about where you're getting something wrong, right?
Yep.
Perfect stupid example is the other day. I always make fun because my wife has these fun quirks. So I was like, play around, maybe you're a little autistic, whatever. I sent her this video about adult autism and like 8 signs of it. And I sent it to her. I'm like, hey, do you see any of these in you? And she's like, I see all of these in you. And we went through it and had this whole conversation. And I'm like, oh.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So now I'm not diagnosed in any way, but well, who knows? But just based on that video, she's like, look, I can give you specific examples of how you're this.
Right. Oh, you're going to try to judge me? Let me judge you right back. Yeah, we're doing this?
Let's tell the truth here.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I love that playfulness and like, how curious we can be when we feel like we're in a space of trust. Right? My friends will call me and say, I've got a crazy idea. And sometimes it is legit a crazy idea. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, so let's talk about implementation of that and the fact that you'd have to blow up your entire life in order to make that happen. And sometimes, these are like really fantastic ideas. And the stuff that comes out of that is so exciting when somebody can just be free to be themselves in totality, especially old friends, right? People who have seen your entire trajectory and love you anyway. But then when you have to go back and explain like, oh, that's not actually me anymore, right? And so I've evolved out of that space. That I think is a thing too. And one of the issues that I've had is trying to figure out in a full culmination, like, who is Meg? Who is she really? Because I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a Christian, I'm a business owner, I run a nonprofit, I am a philanthropist, I'm like all these things, right? But I am grateful to have people who know Meg. Like, they just know Meghan. They just know me. I think my idea in making a podcast is I know so many remarkable people inside of this community and other communities whose story is completely different once you start to like scratch at it, and the tenacity and the grit and the amazing things that they have done inside of their lives need to be celebrated, especially in a time when we're so tumultuous and so many things are dark and negative. Like, I love shining all that light.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's how we met. You want to create a podcast.
Right.
Right. And we're trying to kind of work on that and figure out, okay, what is it? I think you kind of hit on something there, because you have this story. Mm-hmm. And now you appreciate everyone else's story, and you want to bring all these other stories to light and bring it out there. What are you looking for when you're thinking, okay, let's do this? How would you describe that conversation? How do you think it would go if you brought one of these guests on? What would be like the big question you would ask them?
I think for me, having lost, 11 people in 11 years, what I think about is legacy. And what I think about is, how are you leaving people better than you found them? Not yourself. How are you leaving people better than you found them? How are you leaning into them to create value in a community-wide space? So my question would be, how are you doing that? How are you creating a business, or are you working towards something that is for the greater good of all and has a long-term alignment with what you want your legacy to be? That's what's interesting to me. I don't want to go out and have people be like, well, she was an amazing broker. She sold all the houses and blah, blah, blah. Like, come on. That's
Put it on your tombstone. There.
No, I want them to be like, she sat with me after, I lost my dad and helped my mom go through the cardboard box and figure out whether or not they had a mortgage. And, I am in Christ-centered real estate. I am not turn and burn. I'm not transactional. I want to touch as many humans and leave them better than I found them, and in whatever way I can, by helping them, by listening to them. That's my jam. That's what I want.
I was I used to work, I was the video director at a huge mega church down in El Paso, Texas, called Abundant. And the pastor's whole world got turned upside down because they were believers in faith healing and that kind of thing. But mom, pastor's wife, also pastor there, wound up getting ovarian cancer. Ugh. And it wasn't until after she had passed that so many people went up to her children and went up to her husband and told them what she did for their lives. And things like, we couldn't pay tuition for my daughter to be at the academy and all this stuff, and she just paid for it.
Yeah.
Things that they didn't know at all, like at all. And her legacy was even bigger and more well-known after she was gone.
Right. And that you brought up something that I said, which is, without words, which came from a talk that I gave at Unity Christian about, if I were to spend 4 days with you without you being able to tell me what you valued, would I be able to see it in your actions? And I truly believe there are people out there that are, angels among us that are just doing these really special things, going after the one like Jesus did, right? He's in the crowd of people and he still feels the one touch his coat and turns and says, who touched me? Well, everyone was touching him. It was described as a huge crowd of people, right? Yeah. If you don't believe that you can be the one, you are so wrong. You can be the one. You can be the one person that changes the trajectory of someone's day, of their week, of their life, of whatever. And I think we need to look at how individuals inside of our community and beyond our community are doing things without words. You know, there's no billboard shouting out that they're, you know, the most philanthropic or, you know, all of that stuff. They're just after the one and then another one and then another one and another one. And I know a lot of people in this community that, you know, maybe they won't want to share how fantastic they are at going after the one or maybe a population of, but they are. And we need to lean into those businesses and make sure that they're doing really well, because we have to support them just like you, right? Financially, I want you to be supported. I want you to have people to come in who do this because I want you to stick around.
And those are the businesses that give back.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
They're giving back in some way. And if those
Right.
businesses fail, then that giving stops technically, unless they start something else. And
Absolutely.
it becomes, it's huge. So then being more specific, asking yourself the question about legacy and what you're leaving behind, how would you answer that?
My legacy is a lot in my children. It was really, really difficult for me to get them into my arms. But I just want them to know, you know, that they're loved, healed, healthy, and whole, and that they were always enough, and that, you know, the people that are closest to me and the people who have had impact with me, like, I have no beef. I have always wanted the absolute best for everyone, because I think as we grow together, we're better, and that the more supportive we are of each other, we're better. And I really think that God wants a sense of community. I mean, whatever it is, right? Like the universe. When I had issues getting pregnant, I was like in an ashram burning moxa sticks between my toes. I had people poking me with every needle in the entire world and doing all of these like crazy things. In the end, all of these, you know, universal religions are in a space of love and acceptance and grace and gratitude.
Putting thermometers in the wrong place.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's my failure lab. Yeah, you know, I mean, there's just a humility inside of me that's like, I don't know, you know, but I'll help you figure it out, or I do know, and let me help you figure it out, or let me tell you a story about how I really screwed up. And I've already paid that tuition, so how about you don't pay it too? Yeah. So for me, it's just, what do I have of value that I might be able to give to someone else in order to mitigate their pain, make their trajectory faster? Like, I want to be that. I want to be known as the helper.
A lot of people get overwhelmed because they want to make a difference in the world and they think they can't touch the world, and they probably don't realize you can, one person at a time.
Right.
Right. I heard this a long time ago, but it's like when you're struggling, trying to figure out what your calling is in life or what your purpose is, just look around and find a need and fill it.
Sure.
Because you're the one that's right there at that moment. And if no one else is doing it, it's probably because you're supposed to do it. Maybe that's your purpose.
Right.
Maybe just look around you and wherever you are, wherever you're at.
And get out of your comfort zone, right? Like, just go do it and see what it feels like, and go do it again if it feels good. But I think purpose is in alignment with joy. So for me, it's not, you know, real estate volume and all of that stuff that brings me joy. It is helping the person who has the house to buy or sell to get what they want, and then helping my agents now to be able to, you know, benefit back to their family or grow their life or use my experience in order to make somebody else better.
That would be the key, right, to your success, I would think. What you just said is that it isn't about the numbers and how much volume you're trying to sell or whatever. It's about that you're getting joy in helping that one person.
Right.
Broker that deal, right? Like helping them with their lives, or I remember you said in a talk one time, you know, oh, this person's getting divorced and they need to know what this house is worth and how to sell, or you know, another person that you mentioned was like, oh, his wife is like, he needs to keep her safe. Maybe she's got, you know, she's in her
dementia.
dementia, right? And so you helping those individual people then brings you joy.
Right.
So you want to do it again and as often as possible.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean, I mean, I'm sure agents will say, like, I'm a fierce negotiator. I really try to get the best deals for my clients based on what their expectations are. But I don't come for people. I'm collaborative. I'm not competitive. I don't care about what your numbers are. I've got my own plan and trajectory, and that's what I'm working on. And I'm not going to chase people down, right? I'm at a point in my business where if you want me, you know where to find me. You know how I'm going to show up. You know the kind of work that I'm going to do. You can talk to people about the work that I've done for them. But I want a reputation of excellence in a space of helping other people. I think I'm an Enneagram, like 3-2 or 2-3. And I know the helper is in there.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is 6 or 7 years ago, I took it and I was a 6-8, which is the challenger, that, you know, hit it hard, that everything. And in the amount of loss that I've had, it's just given me a perspective of, I know what I value, and it's humans and transactions, and that's what I want my legacy to be. And there's a lot of people out there, I think, who don't know how to balance that and create real connection by listening, by being vulnerable, by showing up early to figure out. I pray the prayer often, like, Lord, just show me who they are, right? If this is a toxic situation where I'm going to go over there, my husband calls it baby birds in boxes. I get all these baby birds in boxes, and then some of them I open the lid and the bird like just bites me over and over again. I am a catastrophic giver. And so I am the perfect kill for a catastrophic taker. And I have people in my life that literally say that they exist so that I don't get thrown in the trunk of a car and die. Because I'm like, oh, sure. Okay. Sounds great. Oh, awesome. But now I've got sort of these governor people to be like, is this a good idea? Who will, you know, help me out? But that's new. Boundaries are new.
I need more of those people in my life too. My wife's one of them. She would say the same thing about me, that I'm like this catastrophic giver, and maybe I'm not paying too close attention because I'm too busy trying to help save, I guess, them or in some way or something. Maybe that's a problem I got to work on. Right?
Yeah. And is it our job? Is it our job to jump in every single time and try to do everything? Is that because we're being helpers, or is that because it's our ego driving it?
Yeah.
Right? Do we need attention for every sale that we make, everything that we do? Yeah. But at the same time, we have to market. We have to show people that we're making an impact.
Right.
And where's the balance in that? How do you figure that out? And I think a lot of it is story. I think a lot of it is, I don't want to see the picture of the real estate agent holding the sign that says sold, because it makes me think, oh, what's their story? Are they new to town? Are they this? Are they that? Like, there's so much value in story.
Yeah.
And I guess I want mine to be one that I tell my kids all the time, I totally screwed up. I showed up in this way. I did this, I did that. And I want them to know, like, I'm a whole person who often has to atone. I mean, it's rare now that you can pop me out of my center. If you come for my children or you come for my husband, that's probably a pretty surefire way.
Yeah.
But I do, 10 deep breaths inside of a situation can really help us to figure out what's going on and then not react, but instead respond so that we can get the outcome that we're really looking for. Right.
There's a now retired pastor who I consider family because we share a mutual granddaughter. His name is Steve Elzinga, and I don't know if he coined this or not, but he always talks about this question. So I'm going to ask it to you.
Okay.
Without any context. What is your spiritual dream?
I've always wanted to be one of these people that, like, hears God. I think that I can feel the touch of the Holy Spirit. I think that there are times where I'm called to go someplace or have a conversation with someone or pick up the phone. I often have people who are like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. I'm having a hard time with. And my husband has said, are you asking the Holy Spirit for the hardest real estate deals you could possibly get? I want that. Like, I want to just be in total understanding and alignment of, like, where would you have me go and what would you have me do? And not get so drawn outside of the walk that Jesus wants me to be on. I mean, my spiritual dream obviously is that I end up someplace where somebody looks at me and says, mostly good job. We're proud of you.
You did pretty good.
Right? Yeah. Like, solid work. I want that, but when people are like, oh, well, God told me, I'm like, really? Is there like a number I can call and I will ask God? I usually don't get these whispers. I get like ruler smacks to the forehead that like, whoa, that is not the right direction, or I'm gonna need you to do this. And I think I was talking to you last week when I said, like, I think it's Isaiah in Moses, right? Like, Isaiah's like, dude, you got the wrong guy. Or no, Isaiah's like, I will put me in.
Elijah and
Elijah, thank you.
Elisha,
yes. Yeah, like, put me in. And then, you have Moses who's like, no, like, you don't know me, like, I'm bad and I can't do this and I don't know how to do that. And I feel like I'm often in between those two spaces. Like, I'm not equipped in totality to say these words or do this thing. But I am. And as long as I stay in the space of serving other people before myself, that's where he wants me to be. So my spiritual dream would be that.
And I think that's really the training ground, right? As you're serving people, as you're moving forward, then you're learning and you're becoming even more equipped.
Yeah. And that, I mean, if I were to get a tattoo, I think it would be still and know. Right? That I've always been held. I've always been protected. I've always had some place to go back to. My grandparents, my parents built a firm foundation there. I know where home is, and I'm aware of what getting lost feels like, and I like home better. So for me, getting away from myself and back to that original download, and meditation is a huge part of my life. Just getting still and knowing that whatever it is, it's for me, or there's an opportunity inside of it to evolve, to learn, to grow. I'd just like that faster. So I would like, I don't know, like just an email every morning about what we're going to do to be like Jesus and what triggers might come. And
Yeah.
Can I have that? That's my spiritual dream.
Yeah, this is what you're in for this week.
This morning, we would like you to do this and go to this place and do this. And oh, by the way, someone is going to cut you off in traffic, and we would like you to show up in a way that is just like Jesus would, right? That's what I want. It's my spiritual dream. Just to
get the email.
Right. I just want an email that tells me how to be a great person. And no, I'm just kidding. I'm sort of kidding. But like, I'm in across sometimes where I'm like Bruce Almighty, where you're like, smite me, Almighty Smiter, and you're just like yelling at the sky. And in your Post-it notes, I put Post-it notes inside of my Bible, and they're all people that I'm praying for. And sometimes it gets like a lot of Post-it notes in there. And that can be really overwhelming, because I don't think that humans are meant to turn on the news and have that level. I mean, if you think about the way that we grew up, like, we weren't getting it from Instagram and Facebook and social media and our friends and everything, like all of this inundation of, darkness, spiritual energy, or warfare, like whatever we want to call it, to hold that center.
Well, and they call it now decompressing, but we had that all the time when our parents kicked us outside to go play.
Right.
And be alone outside in nature and not be on screens or not know any of the problems. Now it's too much. It's nonstop. And then you wind up then having to recite the verse to yourself, be anxious for nothing, but in all things, know, and because that would be my tattoo, be anxious for nothing.
Right. They're the same though, right? Yeah. Be still and know and be anxious for nothing they're real things. And we have to have an awareness that we're going to constantly be pulled out and go back to, no. What are we doing? Why am I doing it? Or why are we doing it? And what is my role? That's Henry Cloud or Townsend, right? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And what is my role? If you can't answer those questions, it's probably not a space that you should be in. You should probably back away from it until you can get clarity on
how you're going to bring value to the situation, and remembering that sometimes no response is a response.
Well, I imagine if people haven't gotten to know you yet, they're getting to know you through this for sure. And I would think that then now a lot more people would want to work with you or find you and be at your table. How do they find you?
Well, so you can find me personally at Meghan at bluewestproperties.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. Those are just Meghan Heritage. My mom spelled my name with an H, so that's helpful. Heritage is spelled just like our American heritage. And I think, honestly, if you Google Meghan Heritage, you'll probably get my cell phone number. So if I am in a position to help you in some way, or you have a story that you want to tell, I think it would be a lot of fun to have more people who are doing good things and doing things for the greater good, and thinking about doing those things without words or accolades, share their stories.
Yeah. Are you open for more clients at Blue West?
Yeah. I mean, we absolutely, it's a down real estate year, I think, for just about everybody in West Michigan. Anybody who's saying that their numbers are just killing it, I would ask them for those numbers. Interest rates are really high. Affordable housing is an issue. That's certainly something that we can talk about on this show. I do think that is an area where I am an expert. I always want to help people to buy or sell homes, and I have an amazing team.
And your podcast that's coming up, how soon do you think that's coming out?
I think that we will have, 3 or 4 episodes by the end of this month, and then pretty consistently get in a rhythm. So if you're somebody who's listening to this and you think that you would be a good guest to come on the podcast and to talk about any of the things I think that we've discussed here, from real estate to entrepreneurship to belonging to philanthropy, we've covered a lot. If you're still listening to us, thank you. Reach out to me and let me know what your jam might be. I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, I got to have you on again, and then probably just be on yours too. But I got to get to know you more. We got to talk more about, rap songs we used to listen to in the 90s. And
absolutely.
When you met Bill Bellamy, we'll keep that as a teaser.
Oh, jeez.
When you...
Wow. Yeah.
These things, we got to have you back on. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I'm excited about the space that you have and what you're doing and what you're providing in being in West Michigan. Thank you for remaining here as a brown person. We really appreciate it. Those of us who are really leaning into that and wanting to be accepted and, making this a place where everybody belongs. So I'm grateful. I appreciate you very, very much.
Well, I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful that, you walked up here and you met my wife first, and then we got to talk, and we have a cool connection, and I'm excited to be a part of your projects and stuff. So I'm glad to know you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.